Jobs. We need them desperately. How are we going to get them? House Majority Leader Eric Cantor and other Republicans hosted a forum on job creation today in Washington, D.C., and they invited business leaders to share their ideas. Now, we sat down with the House Majority Leader. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to be with you.
All right, you had a forum today here on Capitol Hill on jobs. Tell me what it was.
Yeah, it was an opportunity really for us to begin to demonstrate we are changing the culture here in Washington. For too long, what we've seen here is an attempt to really wave a magic wand and go and spend government taxpayer dollars to create jobs. And in contrast, what we did today was we had a forum in which real job creators, some of the largest in the country to some of the very smallest, came together, and we as members of Congress listened to them as to what they're facing and really what they'd like to see happen as far as their being able to create jobs.
There are lots of forums that go on around the city all the time. People gather and talk about things. But the thing I'm always curious about is, what did you learn leaving it, and what do you think the people who are attending it learned? What didn't they know? What didn't you all know before?
Well, what I think is, what I heard was people really want this country to return to the promise that they thought we are about. And we had a woman who was an owner of a small coal company in West Virginia, and she says she's down to 24 employees. And because EPA has come in and big-footed the Department of Environmental Protection in West Virginia, she's been denied 4 permits. She said that if the federal government could work in concert with that state's Environmental Protection Department, she could create 100 jobs. I mean, she could go from 24 jobs to 100 in a matter of 2 years if we just get with the attitude that we want to work with entrepreneurs and business people and stop really the adversarial relationship. And that's really, I think, what I learned is government's really providing an impediment to those who want to create jobs.
But I suppose there are 2 different kinds of permits. There's the one that prevents you from maybe killing 50 people with some sloppy situation, and there's the permit that just gets in the way and prevents you from really creating and improving and being productive and making things better. So how do we know which permit it is?
And that point was made, too, by one of the other individuals who was with us. As president of a Fortune, I'm sure, 100 company, a multinational based in America, that said that, look, regulation comes about in Washington, often with laudable intent. But what in turn often happens is there's unintended consequences, and then the intent of the regulation is totally soured by what it causes and the harm it causes to people trying to make it in this country. And so we do have to do that, and it really calls on all of us to look to the agencies in Washington and say, okay, are you doing your job? Are you doing the job with bearing in mind we need sensible regulation? We're not talking about ideological purity legislation, the type that may look good in theory, but let's weigh it against the facts and what kind of impact it will have on job creators.
So let me ask you about the continuing resolution, which is another indication to the American people that the House, the Senate, and the White House can't seem to get together and do a budget. The budget's well overdue, and now we have another 2 or 3 week continuing resolution because we can't even get a budget to finish the end of the year. How do the American people get the House, the Senate, and the White House to do a budget?
Yeah. Listen, we've been asking that question. I think we've always said, look, we're not coming to shut down the government. We want to cut spending. That's what this is about. We want to cut spending so there's a better environment for job creation.
But you want to cut $61 billion, right?
Well, that's just a start.
But that's this year, right?
That's just a start.
Right.
Let's step back.
The only reason I ask you is because that's less than 2%.
Absolutely.
So it's like chump change.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's an enormous amount of money, but chump change.
And that's the House's position, and the Senate couldn't even muster the 60 votes to even agree to that. So I think your point's a good one, but let's step back for a second. The reason why we can't even get last year's work done is because last Congress sort of was derelict in their duty and sort of kicked the can. We're trying to say, fine, let's resolve this. We got more things to do. We know what the real problems are facing this country from a fiscal standpoint. It's the entitlement programs. Everyone knows if we want to lift the veil of uncertainty as far as the government continuing to spend and borrow the way it has, we've got to come to grips with the fact there's not enough money. We're borrowing nearly 40 cents of every dollar we spend here.
The American people think, yes, we agree with you, we got to do something, but you all have the power to do it, and it's not being done. And worse, I think the House is going on vacation next week, and so the American people think, well, you've only got till you passed until April 8th, so it's been kicked down, the can's been kicked down the street till April 8th, and now you're all going on vacation.
Well, the Senate and the House are going to be out next week.
We call it vacation.
Yeah, well, listen, you know, call it what you will.
Okay.
We're about trying to make sure that we, listen to the people that put us here. I mean, and that's really what's happened is that if we don't remember who put us here, all of a sudden all the answers come out of Washington. And that's what's going on with this budget debate right now. Somehow we're seeing the Senate say all that they can muster from Harry Reid's standpoint is $10 billion off of the current year's budget. That's essentially like the status quo.
All right, well, I didn't get my answer on why everyone's taking off next week, so I'll leave it alone. I won't beat a dead horse, but let me ask you.
I'll respond to that, though. I mean, listen, we put a schedule in place so that we can go back and be with the people who elected us. And
so your idea is to go back and let everyone sort of talk to his or her constituents back home.
The problem is, up until this year, we have been in a schedule that folks have not been allowed to go home and speak to their constituents. What we intend is, and in fact, we'll be in as many days this year as we were in the past, but yet we provided some certainty so constituents can come see the people that they elect to go to Washington. And frankly, we should be that Jeffersonian model. Citizen legislators. We shouldn't be creatures of this town. We come from our districts, and that's where we ought to get the guidance.
We'd like to note one thing. During the interview, I called Congress break a vacation, but it's formally known as a constituent work week. And there's more of our interview with Leader Cantor, so see the entire interview. Check out GretaWire.com.